if things are too tough, it's not that fun. Would you like to try an earlier level on a harder difficulty? Did my stream go down? I think my stream is still up. Jay LeClanche. Oh, people are panicking. Hey. Which is stream's back up. Okay, great. Yeah, refresh, guys. I think that was just a Twitch glitch. Yes, I love that, Alex. If you die more than 100 times, then it basically asks, is this what you want to keep doing, or do you want to try something else? And that's fantastic. I like that. I like that a lot. There's V mode, which is no corpse mode. There's Iron mode, that has corpses but also traps respawn. That's cool. You put in a lot of different ways to adjust how much this mechanic affects the actual game, for players who know more what they want, and want a sort of specifically harder experience, intentionally harder experience. Oh God. Okay, I spent 15 minutes on that question. That's par for the course. I'm gonna move on. Can you think of any other game that does the death mechanic this brilliantly? Most games get harder or stay the same when you die. This game becomes easier. It's a feedback loop that I think is great. I also think it's great. I think it's really, really smart. I haven't seen it a lot. I think that it is very related to rubber banding, which is a design principle. It's a design practice that's in a lot of games, to different degrees and in different ways. In terms of how death is used, I mean, I can think of a few games where death is significant, and significant in a way that's not just sort of punishing. I mean, because it's in the air, because I was just talking about it this week, because the reboot came out. The original Prey had a mechanic where it was a first-person shooter, where if you died, then you would go into like a spirit world, and you would play like a mini game, and the mini game would determine how much of your health and I don't know. Maybe you had magic or something. I forget exactly what the mechanics of that game were, but how much your consumable stats, how much of that you would recover, and then you would go back into the world in sort of the same place, I think. And I like, somebody who remembers that game better than me, clarify like how the fuck this worked. But I actually think my point is, I think it was possible for you to, in the shooter, go in to a section with very low health and like fight some enemies and just get destroyed. And then because of the death mechanic and the mini game, you could respawn in essentially the same place with a lot of your health restored. And so then you could sort of go through that again, but in a better position, and able to do it better. So that's one. Death mechanics, huh? There was another thing that I was just thinking about, but I don't remember what it was. Chat is coming up with some that I don't really know. I think Awesome Knots, Life Goes On. Yeah, so I do want to point out the Prey death mechanic was not perfect. The game Prey, the original game from 11 years ago, from 2006, was certainly not a perfect game. It had plenty of flaws, but it did sort of do something that was it was trying something. It was trying something different than other shooters at the time. Maybe something else will come to me. I do think that uh, there are other examples of games that play around with the idea of death. There are certainly other games that play around with the idea of difficulty. I mean, so okay, all right. No, I've got one for you. I've got one. This is a good one. Flow. So Flow, for those of you unfamiliar with it, was the first game published by That Game Company, which came out of USC's Interactive Media and Games division. And that's the company that made Journey. Flow was a very simple game that was on the PlayStation 3, pretty sure the 3. It's also on the 4. And you were like a microorganism swimming around in some sort of a broth, and there were small organisms that you could eat, and there were large organisms that tried to eat you, and there were some like things that you could sort of achieve. There was a way to achieve things. You weren't just floating around, but a lot of it was you were just floating around. And every time you successfully ate the right kind of organism, at least, you would dive down. So the whole thing was played on a 2D plane, but when you essentially beat the plane, you would dive down to a lower plane, the camera would come with you, and now you're on a different level. As you dive down, the levels get harder and harder, more and more complicated. There are more bigger enemies, and they're faster, and they target you more aggressively. It's harder to catch the things that you're trying to catch. So you dive down until you got to a point where something would catch you and eat you, and then it wouldn't end the game. It would push you back up to the level above. And so the game was essentially very quickly finding your balance point, finding the place where you could compete in the difficulty of the level that you were on. But it was challenging to get further, because if it was easy for you to get further, you would go to the next level where it was more challenging, and if that was too hard, it would push you back up. So you would find this sort of equilibrium of oscillating between a few different levels at sort of the appropriate challenge level. Okay. Are you tempted to make a teddy bear ball pit? I mean, only kind of. It's actually like I really like the physics on the corpses, but they interact better with the level, with sort of the architecture of the level, than they interact with each other or with the player. So if you filled up a pit, like a ball pit style thing, if you filled that up with bear corpses, you would pretty much just like walk around on the top of it. It would be really hard to finagle it so that you could dig down into it and do something like ball pit like, which is super intentional. Like, it would be really easy to put round edges. I mean, it'd be really easy, but it'd be really easy to put like capsule colliders on these bears, and to adjust the physics so that they reacted in a more excited sort of a way to physical interactions, or just lower their mass. Yeah, absolutely, that would also do it. And the game doesn't do that because the intention, the purpose of them is for them to act as obstacles, as to plug up holes, to cover spikes, to block missiles, and it does that by treating them more like just solid blocks than anything else. And so they kind of wouldn't make a great ball pit. I mean, that makes me sort of want to play a ball pit game. Like, I bet we could put together. No, actually, that sounds like a nightmare to do the physics on, to do like a 2D platformer style ball pit game. Wow, that sounds awful. That sounds awful. Okay, yeah, let's not do that. Somebody else do all of the work, and then I'll play it. That sounds fun. Do you wish there was more motivation for why Super Rude Bear is doing all of these trials? Would it benefit from backstory or story progression? This is a really interesting question. I am a narrative person. I like narrative in games. And I like I especially like sort of narrative context that makes sense. But I mean, I kind of make an exception for this. I feel really good. So to answer the question, I feel really good about the level of narrative introduction, the level of background, the way that the narrative is expressed through the game, and the way that it gives me motivation as a player and a character. A lot of that comes down to genre conventions. So the massacre genre tends to be extremely light on any kind of in-game narrative. And that's because in-game narrative typically creates friction, creates a slowdown in the action. And Massacre is all about moving fast, finding your flow, and go, 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 go. And dying a million times and having dying a million times not slow you down. So that's often sort of incompatible with a lot of narrative techniques. Now, that's not to say that Massacre games don't have narrative elements. A lot of them, so like Super Meat Boy we'll look at, has a narrative context that is not really presented in or through the game, but you sort of get, as a part of the package, that there are these three characters and your girlfriend has been kidnapped by this other character and you're trying to save her, and you're going through level after level, Mario style, trying to find her so that you can save her. You've got something like Hotline Miami, which partitions the gameplay into levels and then has a significant amount of narrative content in between levels, where it's essentially giving you as a player a breather. It's allowing you to take a break from all of the crazy gameplay that you've been doing, and follow along with the story. And then now we're going to start over on some more gameplay, but checkpointed at that moment. So this game doesn't do that. It doesn't have interstitial narrative. It has a little bit with the fairy, based on the fairy. It has the same kind of like narrative context of you've been effectively kidnapped in order to go on a mission and save something. But I feel like that that story is very abstract. It's very light, and it's intentionally light and it's intentionally ridiculous, because the game is very deep in its massacre aesthetic of this is not about the story. This is about the challenge of the platforming. Your motivation to get to the other side is that everything is trying to kill you until you get to the other side. And there's so it's I feel like it's an appropriate amount of like here's some narrative wrapper for all of that, but it doesn't interfere with what people are really coming to the game for. And then it's got the sort of ongoing narrative through the I mean not dialogue, the monologue of the fairy companion who's following you around, which is, it provides some world building, it provides some color, not a lot, but a little enough, I feel like, to keep it going. But it's also like so hard to follow along with that you sort of just have to accept that, hey, this is not about that narrative. The narrative is like this is a bear who hung out with his animal friends, and they're all kind of slacker rebel. I mean, like James Dean style rebels without a cause, who gets kidnapped and has to do all of this crazy shit, and so you do, and you're asked to just. I mean, okay, so this is bringing up like why a rude bear? Like, what is the idea behind the rude bear? And I bet Alex actually has an answer to this, that's based on the history of the development of the game, which I know was a Ludum Dare game at one point, and he's been working on it for 3 years. So and there's other sort of offshoots from it. So I'm sure that like that came about organically in a certain way, but it's really significant that it is part of the final design of the game. And it was initially questionable to me, like what is the idea? What is the point of this being a rude bear? He does not express rudeness once you're in the game. Once you're actually playing the game, he's just platforming. It could be, he could be a super nice bear, and it would make no difference. But the opening of the game with Super Rude Bear and these other characters, and they're sort of like hanging out sullenly in an alley, and then all of a sudden, like a fairy appears from nowhere and says, "I need you to save me from a wizard. Come through this portal. Here we go." All of that contributes to a real, like, a silliness, a ridiculousness that hits you over the head at the very beginning and demands a certain level of suspension of disbelief. And I think like demands it in an appropriate way. It's not demanding it sort of out of nowhere. It's creating this sort of pleasantly ridiculous situation, and asking you to just accept that, and that sets the tone for just accepting what happens for the rest of the game, including on a base mechanical level that you are going to be like platforming your way through the most ridiculous things, and then also that like you're going to be crawling over piles of your own corpses in order to reach the exit on the other side. And then also some of the subsequent aesthetics that are less obvious, less upfront. But for example, like Alex has created these various towers, and each tower has some sort of a theme, a sort of an elemental theme, or a I mean, I don't even know what it is. It's not just elemental. You've got an ice level, but then you've got like a desert level. You've got like a high tech factory level. It sounds like there's a space level. And the fact that there's no coherence whatsoever between these levels, like why is there an ice tower and a desert? I would buy ice tower, fire tower, water tower, something like that. But ice tower, desert tower, high tech factory tower, like what is the connecting thread there? It doesn't make any sense. Well, that's fine. We established at the very beginning none of this makes any sense. You agreed as a player implicitly. You weren't going to demand that it make any sense. You were just going to accept that it doesn't really make any sense. You're a rude bear who's been kidnapped by a fairy in order to save some towers from a wizard. Like, let's just do that. And so that works perfectly well. I don't blink when we get into high tech factory world. Like that's fine. That seems totally, that's legit. Let's do that. So I think that that's part of like how that whole thing works. And it makes it really sort of makes some of those decisions make sense. Okay. Please tell us your opinion. Okay, so I'm going to skip a bunch of questions. Sorry, guys. I got to go home and eat. Please tell us your opinion of what a rude dragon is like. Okay, so super rude dragon resurrection. I mean, you've already framed this in a weird way, right? Because normally I would think like, how would this game be better with dragons? Where do we put a dragon in this game? And it's typically either environmental or as a specific challenge. But you're saying specifically, you are asking me, what if the protagonist was a dragon? And I'm going to cop out and say, well, isn't he? Isn't that sort of the point of the game? Is that in comparison to all other games of this genre, this protagonist has an ability that breaks the world, like fundamentally shatters the rules on which the world is previously understood to be based, which is one of our definitions for dragon, right? Is a creature that just is inexplicably other, that breaks the rules, that requires you to approach a situation in a way that you would not otherwise expect. Super Rude Bear has the ability to affect his surroundings in a way that persists across deaths, which is an incredibly dragon-like ability. So I mean, I feel like I don't know that this game needs a lot more to be really considered a dragon game. Alex, if you are wondering what the fuck is going on, this is a recurring question in for this chat. We like to ask for no particular reason whether and why games would be better if they had dragons in them. So if the character were actually a dragon, I mean, one of the things that we'd expect a dragon to be able to do is fly. Flying explicitly breaks a lot of the level design. I mean, the game itself comments on that. So I don't know what you do with that. I mean, I think the you could design levels that are hard for flying. In fact, the game actually kind of does this because the way that it handles wall jumping, which is not like super outrageous. Um, it's fairly standard, but it's a particularly like frenetic, chaotic kind of a wall jump that allows you to do wall climbing, and you have a lot of mid-air mobility. Uh, it utilizes that in a lot of places in ways that feels Flappy Bird like. That feels like you're using the wall jumps as though that were a sort of flying mechanic that has some serious constraints on it, that imposes real dangers. And so, if you just sort of took that off of the walls, if you took the character and made it into sort of a Flappy Bird kind of a flyer, I don't know. I feel like the game would be less fun. I really like the movement controls. I really like the way that the character moves around. I think you could make a different game that did that. But I don't know. Maybe Rude Dragon just is too sullen to fly, and just doesn't want to do that thing. That's super traditional. So maybe it's not an issue. Maybe Rude Dragon is more. Yeah, but then again, I mean, I think and then it becomes just like Super Rude Bear doesn't have an enormous amount of personality. It seems like he should, and he does sort of at the beginning, and he's got a look that expresses some personality. But as a character in the game, mechanically, he doesn't really have a lot of personality, and doesn't deserve it, doesn't like need it. A character like replacing that character with a different character seems kind of trivial to me, because it would just be another character that stands in there. Replacing it with a character that has more personality seems weird to me. It seems like you're injecting too much personality into this kind of game. So I feel good as this is one of those games that we found where it hits a local optimum, and doesn't really need a dragon, at least in the protagonist role. Rad4. Oh, interesting. It in Twitch mode, one of the abilities is actually become death, in which case you become like a Grim Reaper bear and you can fly infinitely. Alex, I didn't understand this. I'm going to read through your comments, but can you confirm for me, when you say in Twitch mode, do you mean that this game has a mode that I didn't see that is meant to connect to a Twitch channel so that chat can interact with the game? Is that what Twitch mode is? Because I just had some students make a game like that. I've had a couple of experiences with that sort of game that uses the Twitch API. I know that sort of thing is possible and really cool, but I didn't expect it from this game. Is that what you're talking about? Anyway, you become the Grim Reaper bear, and you can fly infinitely. It doesn't break the game. It just makes it super easy. So it doesn't completely break it, but it kind of breaks it. The last boss, you have that ability. It gets compared to Flappy Bird a lot. Last level is designed for that, obviously. Yeah, that's sort of my point, is that you could change the movement mechanics for the character, but then you'd have to redesign the entire game around that, because the game is clearly designed very carefully for the particular movement mechanics that Twitch integration in the advanced menu. People can vote on effects that help or hinder you. Talk through your fairy. Holy shit. Spam verified emails on your screen. Okay, sweet. So we will be playing Super Rude Bear again some other time, maybe on After Class, maybe just here on some day when we're looking for something low-key fun to do. We'll play some Twitch integrated Super Rude Bear. That sounds amazing. Holy shit. Okay, all right, that sounds like fun. All right. Last thing that I want to do before I sign off, I have, I think, opened up a raffle. So anybody who is still around, please, right now. No, now it's open. Right now, go ahead and exclamation point raffle. Will add you to the raffle. Guys, raffle in. And I'll draw one in just a minute. Yes. So I announced on Twitter, just to let you guys know, there will be no after class tomorrow. Tomorrow is literally graduation day, and it's a fucking mess on campus. I mean, it's great. It's fantastic. Congratulations, everybody who's graduating from USC. Also, it's gorgeous. They've got the whole campus set up. It looks beautiful. Everybody's family is here. It's really very nice, but it's also a mess. So everybody's going to be busy. Nobody's going to be in the lab. We're just not going to do a show. But we will do one next week. Jesse and I will be doing something. I think we've got some student games that we want to play. I really want to show you guys Second Nature because it's awesome. So I think we'll probably play some of that and maybe some more Gold Rushers, or I don't know. And what else is there? Oh, anybody who's watching this on YouTube, I am about to hit a big red button that is going to switch my YouTube account from a personal account to a branded account. I actually have no idea what that's going to do to anything. It's going to move all of my content over to a new location. I think that it should be seamless for anybody who follows me on YouTube. It should also migrate you over to the new account. The only thing that it's going to really play havoc with is anybody who has my channel bookmarked, because the URL will change. Seems unlikely. I don't think that anybody has my channel bookmarked except for me. So probably won't affect anybody, but I wanted to announce that it was going to happen at some point before it actually happens. But it should happen soon. And hopefully it'll be seamless. Nobody will even know. All right. You guys all enter the raffle. Let's draw. Oh, Foxstash. Congratulations, Foxstash. You won a copy of Super Rude Bear Resurrection. I will contact you via Twitter with the Steam key. Thanks, guys. This was great. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much to Alex. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us. Thank you. I mean, I can't express enough. Thank you so much for sticking around for this whole show, for answering questions, and for being so active in the chat. I know it means a lot to me to have you engage with folks that are here. I know it means a lot to them too. We like to talk about the games that we're playing, so it adds a lot to have somebody come in and be able to talk about how it was made and the thinking behind it and what you were doing. I hope that this game is super, super successful for you. It's available, like I said, it's available on Steam right now. It's also available on PS4. I recommend it. It's a really, really, really smart update on the Massacre formula. It's a great game for people who enjoy games but find that they get frustrated at Massacre games and don't always enjoy that experience. This is cool. It's worth playing. It's worth feeling for yourself how that tension ramps up. Yeah, and Alex, especially because it's so late where you are, it means a lot to me that you would stick around. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you everybody for joining me for Play by Play this week. I look forward to next week. I'm working on a big grant at work for the next 3 weeks, so it's possible that will impact my streaming schedule. I'll let you know. I'll try to let you know with some advance warning if that looks likely. But yeah. All right, that's it. Have a good night, everybody, and I'll see you guys next week.